Former Lagos State governorship aspirant Funso Doherty has called on the National Assembly to investigate the newly approved 15% import duty on petrol, warning it will worsen economic hardship for Nigerians. In a letter to Senate President Godswill Akpabio, Doherty described the tariff as ill-timed and unjustified, arguing it could add about 100 naira to pump prices and fuel fresh inflation. He faulted the rationale that the levy would support local fuel producers, noting that major refineries such as Dangote already enjoyed tax waivers and incentives. We have joining us now in the studio the former governorship candidate himself, Funso Doherty. It's a pleasure to have you with us, sir.
Pleasure to be here.
Yes. We also have Professor Ken Ife, a global consultant on development economics, with us in the studio.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Let's begin with you, Mr. Doherty. And of course, you are calling on the National Assembly to investigate this 15% import duties. What are your concerns, and do you have any anticipation of what the outcome of this investigation could be?
Thank you. No, I don't have a preconception. To start with your last question, I don't have a preconception about the outcome of the investigation. But I think there are a few things that I think are worth looking into. First is the fact that this tariff comes on the heels of the removal of subsidies. And remember that when we talk about fuel, we're talking about two subsidies: subsidy on the petroleum product itself and subsidy on forex. Now, this has resulted in a 5-fold increase in prices within the last 2 years. From the consumer's perspective, that's a crushing burden when you think about the pervasive influence of the cost of fuel on the lives of the average citizen. So that's the first thing. The second is that the source of this memo, which was subsequently approved by the president, we understand is the NRS, which is what used to be the FIRS. And tariffs are a customs and excise thing, right, which is trade-related. So it really is outside the scope, even when you look at the Nigerian Revenue Service Act. It's outside the scope of their activities. So one wonders why it originates from there. The third thing is that these refiners, primarily Dangote, which is the major refiner, already benefits from a lot of tax waivers, incentives, and so on, being in an export processing zone. Indeed, even in the construction of the refinery, we were in this market when a lot of advantage was being given to, and perhaps rightly so, in the construction of the refinery, even in the allocation of foreign exchange, in the days when foreign exchange was scarce and so on. So we are quite happy to support business activity. But I think in conclusion, my contention is that this is not something, given the dominance of the position, that should just be implemented at the stroke of a pen. We should understand why it is that this is required at this time, coming on the heels of what people have already experienced. And it should not be something that is just done. There should be congressional oversight, that is National Assembly oversight, to understand, as representatives of the people, why this is necessary. If you say it's cost recovery, what costs are we talking about? And is it truly justified as part of a trade policy? And in doing that, it should not be, in the first place, the IRS or the FIRS. It should be the Ministry of Trade and Industry. It should be the NMDPRA. It should be industry operators. And they should sit down and look at the whole thing and arrive ultimately at the conviction, if it is the case that this thing is justified, then people will support it. But given the context, I think it's not something that we should just take at face value.
Interesting. We shouldn't take it at face value. I'm coming to you, Prof, and you've heard the concerns. One of the justifications given for this tariff is protectionism, right? And the question a lot of people are asking is, who are we protecting? The people? Or is it policy being tilted to favor one particular enterprise? What are your thoughts on that?
First of all, there's a background that we shouldn't miss, which is 1960, we got political independence. Up to today, we haven't got economic independence. And we should, as a nation, be working towards at least economic independence on those raw materials God has given to Nigeria, which is agriculture, which is a solid mineral, which is petroleum and gas. At least if you can secure those, yeah, you can continue to fight on ICT and machines and all that stuff. But we have to get that as a minimum. Number two, International Division of Labor from 1945 consigned us to exporter of raw materials and then importer of finished goods. If you stay at that end of importing or exporting raw material, you're exporting your jobs and importing poverty. And you stay at the other end of consuming, you will never, ever develop your economy. Because all the people sitting in the middle are where the jobs are, where the profits are. You get 10% for your raw material, and you look for 100% to buy the finished product, and you end up borrowing money from everybody around the world to consume. That's what it says. Now, locating this within this context is the government's objective, as far as I know, are fourfold. And there's even one that I added. One is that this is a measure. I've never seen fiscal policy measure that really delivers compliance as this one, since this government came into power. First of all, it deals with the chronic problem of fraud and theft, and all the things that go on in the import of subsidized fuel in the country.
That's outside of the 15%?
No.
Other reforms?
No, within this 15%,
Okay.
because there's a measure.
Okay.
It's a tariff compliance measure. Now, so what happens is that we all know, every Nigerian know, that when EFCC moved in, importers were admitting they bring 30 million tanker later. They'll discharge 10, they record 30 for them, they go to Lehman, come back, they discharge 10, they record 30. In the third one, they record 90 million when they actually had 30 million liters. There are many of those evidence, and they have not been cured till today. And then we have an NNPRDFP that is just not addressing the issue. It hasn't addressed the issue of how much petrol is actually being consumed in Nigeria. And we got a wind of it when we closed the border. Suddenly there's a drop of 35%. So that is going on. Now, what happens now, this duty, which is a levy, by the way, what this levy is doing is, if you want to come and do that round trip, come, and you end up paying 15 plus 15, you pay 45%. And that money goes to government. It doesn't go into the pocket of any of the actors. Now, the second one, of course, is it's intended to protect local companies, local producers. And then I'll tell you the justification, because there are trade laws and trade, I will deal with those. Then it also brings in parity, because the price benchmark is based on import price. That's for you to get that parity. You must get the import price parity, which is the benchmark that is used. Now, people who make fuel abroad and send it to you to import have already recovered their costs and got their profit. So a problem is arriving at Nigerian port to face companies that are locally refining, that are struggling on break-even before their profit is, before they actually arrive at the price break point. So in terms of parity, there must be parity there before you, do you understand? So then I'm going to look at the trade law. But the other one is, it is actually intended to protect the consumers. Because what we have experienced is vagaries, misalignments in the storage, distribution, and logistics sector that actually delivers the fuel. And then every day, they're charging, the prices are not stable. Then finally, it opens the door for investors to come into the country and refine products. Otherwise, explain to me why you have 30 licenses for refineries and only 3 of them are struggling to come up. It's because there is a disincentive. So, and they know it. They can't borrow money, put in here, and they can't make profit.
Amongst other things that you've highlighted, you've mentioned that it's to protect the consumers.
Yes, and I'm coming to that.
Yeah, I'm going
to explain that to you.
I'll come back to you. I'm going to come to Mr. Doherty now with that. You've heard, his justifications for this 15% tariff. You have said it is ill-timed, that it worsens the situation of the consumer. Is it from a perspective of reform overload? Is this something you think we'll still have to do further down the road? Or do you think it's best we do it now and rip off the Band-Aid?
No, I think all of these justifications, rationales, and so on, they are propositions, right? Because at the end of the day, it is not known. These are private companies. We don't see their financials. So whether their activity is profitable or not profitable, whether they need this additional help or not, it is not obvious and it's not evident. You see what I mean? So my point is that before you come to the consumer who is already stretched and struggling to pay for their healthcare and education and so on, having borne a 5-fold increase in fuel prices, before you come to them to collect money, additional 100 naira at the pump price, give us evidence of these things that you are talking about, that in fact, your costs are this and that, and therefore you need this additional help. And then we can say, okay, we'll dip our hands into the people's pockets so that your refinery can be stabilized. You see what I mean?
Right.
That is what we are saying. And if that's the case, nobody should run away from that. If the National Assembly says, okay, we hear you, we have heard what you are asking for, come, let's have a look. Let's see the evidence. And if it makes sense, we will ask the people to support you. And in fact, the people will be happy to support you, right? But let us not make arguments that are on the face of it arguments and then expect people to accept them and then dip their hands into their already stretched pockets. Let us do things the proper way. Right. This is what national assemblies everywhere in the world in developed democracies do. There's that element of oversight where they also come in and say, okay, on behalf of the people, let us understand this thing very well and communicate it to the people. And it should not just be a question of take it from me. We need this and let's do it.
Right, and that calls to question the issue of transparency. The ability of data, cost, the pricing. Why is that data not available and the issue of transparency not being addressed?
Oh, I don't agree in the first place.
Okay.
No. If you look at the price mechanism, first of all, Dangote is the principal actor on the downstream side. It's the principal, not the only one. They say they put out a guarantee that they will guarantee this price till at least end of December. That they guarantee this price is not going to rise. They say they've guaranteed that. Do they have the capacity to give this guarantee? Of course, they are producing 45 million liters of PMS, of which only 20 million is being taken out. And they are now forced to export the other 25. So the capacity is there to meet the demand. But they gave a guarantee. Now, the second point is that I can actually analyze the price tag for you to say if the gantry price is 820 naira, who gets what in that price tag? Those who prospect, those who drill, those who transport, then the people that refine. All of them are under that price tag.
And all this data is available?
No, I'm telling you, the gantry price of fuel, and I'm giving you the analysis of who is behind that. And then you now look at the price, the difference between that gantry price and what is being sold in the market. Some are selling 1,000. So the people who are investing the money are scrambling for pennies. And then somebody is getting 400, 300 people for doing what? The man that actually dispenses the petrol to your car doesn't get $50 or 50 naira per liter. So who is the middlemen are the people packing up all that profit? So keep that aside. Then there's issue about inviting Senate. We don't need to invite National Assembly because we have delegated authority, legislative authority on the bill. PIA provides for regulation to be made, and the president is the minister for petroleum. He has given the directive to NMDPRA to bring the regulation to put it into force. So that power has been delegated. You don't need to go back to assembly because that has been delegated under that PIA law. Then you now talked about trade, the bona fide, whether they should actually get involved in that. That is not an issue because bills going to assembly could either come private members' bill or it could be government bill. And I even have a case of raw material research, 30% coming from raw material research and development, not coming from trade and industry.
Okay.
So if one department doesn't do their job, it doesn't prevent whoever knows or whoever can do it. So it's not material.
Okay. So let's
and I can also tell you about the WTO dimension, ECO dimension.
We'll get into that. We'll get into that. Let me
the fallout of trade policy.
Let me come to Mr. Doherty now. He's saying that we don't need to get the National Assembly involved in this, that there are other bodies that can handle this. What are your thoughts on that?
To me, it's not about you inviting the National Assembly. It's not you're in the place of the executive to invite the National Assembly. The National Assembly is a separate arm of government.
But you're calling on them to investigate.
Yes. The National Assembly is a separate arm of government, right? It doesn't need the permission of the executive to launch an inquiry. It does not. It can sit on its own and launch a National Assembly inquiry into something that the executive has done. This is part of the oversight power of the National Assembly. That is why we have separation of powers. The National Assembly represents the interests of the people, all right? There could be times when the executive is pursuing a line of action that, in the opinion of the legislature, is inimical to the interests of the people, and they're the representatives of the people also in government. You see what I mean? So they have absolutely that right to do it. And we're not saying that they should strike it down. We're saying that as our representatives, all these propositions that are being put forward, as if they are fact, as if they are gospel, somebody should be able to say, okay, come and show us. Because all these things that we're talking, that people are talking as outsiders, right? Nobody has looked at the financial statements of Dangote or any of the other operators to say, I have looked at it, I can see that these are your costs, I can see. Analysis of gantry price is going to talk about the import price of petrol, the margin for the depots, the margin for the transporters, and so on. That is on the price. You are talking about this using cost recovery as a justification for this import tariff. Cost recovery is not about the gantry price breakdown. Cost recovery is about the underlying costs of the refiner themselves. Bear in mind that refining industry is a low-margin industry everywhere in the world. So you can't go into refining industry and expect to be making big margins. It's not done anywhere in the world. It's a low-margin business, right? So you cannot create unusual circumstances where you have high margins in a low-margin business and expect people to bear the costs. All I'm saying is that if indeed this additional import tariff is something that is necessary and essential to sustain the valid operation of the operators like the Dangote refinery, it will be justified. But we should not take it at face value. We should know through an investigative work that is done by those who we elected to do that work, to also check and say, okay, we think that this thing is as has been stated, and we agree with this and concur with this.
Mm-hmm. All right, and Prof, I'm coming to you now. You have said in there that, yes, there are other players that will benefit from this, but Dangote is the major player that will benefit from this. There are some who are saying that this is not how resilient companies are built, right? It's not a level playing field. There are already a lot of benefits that Dangote Refinery and amongst other players are enjoying. Naira for crude, the zone he's in, he's exempt from certain taxation. So is this how strong companies are built?
I think I don't even agree with that, because NNPC has 4 refineries. 3 more refineries are coming up from Modular. So Dangote is the only one, and even Bua is coming up. So, and all these refineries are not in the free trade zone as such. So why would we use the issue of free trade zone? The fact is that if Dangote with $20 billion could not be anywhere except in free trade zone, because the risk is so horrendous. But put that aside. The main thing, in fact, and detail that you need about consumers, because that's a major contention here, is that even with that 100 naira extra that you are going to put on top of 860, that brings it to 960. That is $0.62. And that's the minimum in our region. Ghana is $1.37, twice what we are charging per liter. Then Cote d'Ivoire and Senegal, $1.7, 3 times what we are. So why are you bringing this argument about punishing the consumers?
So is it going to have any effect on, look, what effect do you see it having on the consumer?
What effect? The price? When there's a guarantee of both delivery and availability and then price freeze. There's a guarantee.
Until when?
And then the thing is this. I'm coming, because they are subject to some other things.
Our time is fast spent, gentlemen. So just 30 seconds, right, to tie your point together.
Okay, I can tie mine because I know where I'm going. Under the ECOWAS Treaty, which we are in customs zone there, and the conventional tariff, we are protected to a safeguard measure. Except that you have to call it levy, don't call it tariff. That's what it provides. Right. Then under WTO, 5 clauses, 5 agreements, a countervailing measure, anti-dumping measure, infant industry. All of those 5 measures in under WTO supports a robust position that government has taken.
Okay, let me give you the final word. 30 seconds, please.
You know what? We can pontificate, we can talk up and down, we can make propositions. But this is about people's lives. Somebody was paying 200 naira for something. That thing is now 800, 900 naira, right? You say you've removed subsidy. They've borne it. Now you now want to put a tax on top of it. We make all these arguments about business, and so I'm a business person too.
Right.
I have a background in business. At the end of the day, this is about people's lives. We are not saying don't do it. Subject it to scrutiny. All right, and let there be transparency. Thank you so much for your time, gentlemen. Funso Doherty, former Lagos State governorship aspirant, and Professor Ken Ife, global consultant on development economics. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time.
Thank you.